Hello, once again, everybody. Note once again, I might actually be able to get this video up and live, no guarantees, because good God, even though I've been, busy with other things, I have been recording in the downtime. And one of the issues with that is, well, I got a lot of editing to do because, of course, the algorithm is being updated pretty often to add new words to the list of banned things that you can't talk about or say, and it's kind of frustrating dealing with trying to encode language and ideas to get past the filter because God forbid you actually, cover anything important. Anyway, and you're not mainstream media because in the mainstream they can cover all this shit all day long. But for everybody else, God forbid you even mention it. Anyway, we're going to talk about Iran, and damn it, I already did it. I already did it. Oh, too late. We're going to talk about Iran and the fact that it is just one of the myriad of distractions that are coming out. Now, we've had quite a few distractions. Now, the severity and level of these distractions are definitely growing over time. Of course, we had the island to bounce back and forth, talking about. We had this new war. We've had a new virus that they've been trying to spin up into the next Kufsident. We've had quite a lot of, especially with Iran, increasing severity. Now, the question is, all right, because a lot of people are sitting back and asking the question, we've got a, mm, mm, can't say it, we've got a flood, an absolute Noah's Ark level flood of distractions tying up everyone and everything possible. What is the core? What's actually going on? Well, we know that the Iranians were definitely tied in with China and Russia. We very well know that drone production that the Russians were using to fight Ukraine was initially started in Iran, and the Russians had gotten the build plans and schematics for those so they can start building them in the event something happened to Iran. How convenient something happened to Iran. China, even though the reports are that East Asia is absolutely sinking, uh, China right now is actually adding to its reserves. Now, part of this has to do with the fact that Iran is definitely part of the Eurasian project, officially or unofficially. Um, if I remember correctly, I think Iran is the chair member, essentially the chairman of BRICS. I forget the exact position, but there's an Iranian in charge of it as an acting member. Regardless, the Chinese are looking at setting up pipelines so they can just pull oil directly from the Middle East and not have any kind of supply issues going forward. Of course, the rest of the Asian countries are kind of a basket case right now where more and more people are having to switch back to walking, supposedly, because oil supplies are tightening up and it's absolute chaos everywhere. What is the core? Now, I wonder this myself because honestly, we have not had this many distractions all at once. All right. Even the coup incident was a distraction from the fact that the economy was having a seizure within the paper system. All right. Because the economy, of course, is two separate things. You have the real economy and the paper economy. In 2008, going back to 2008, the real economy essentially died, and the paper economy went on life support. All right. The only thing that has propped up the real economy largely is the welfare state. All right, it's welfare state, it's tax cuts. It's if you look at the numbers, if you pay attention to what's really going on, essentially most of the jobs in the quote unquote real economy are essentially welfare jobs. They're jobs that shouldn't exist, just like most of the office jobs are also welfare jobs. They shouldn't exist. All right. If when you talk about free markets and capitalism and efficiency, capitalism hasn't produced efficiency. It's produced middle managers specifically hiring hordes of people that they yell at to get them their coffee. All right. It has been office workers who traditionally have 2 hours worth of work that they, at best, most cases, it's 1 hour worth of work. It's emails. And these days, it's a whole lot of useless, pointless meetings where everybody throws around jargon and semantic bullshit. But nothing actually gets done. Your average office worker had 1 to 2 hours of work to do each day, and they had to endure 6 hours of boredom or stretch out that 1 to 2 hours worth of work across the entirety of the day. So, literally writing one line of an email that you have to send out and then waiting a half hour to write another one. All right. In reality, what most people were doing, of course, were they were on Facebook and on Reddit, and they were totally not looking at triple X content. That's what most people did. Okay. Most of the jobs in the real economy shouldn't exist. Now you have the AI push, which of course threatens not just the jobs that shouldn't exist, but is increasingly going to be, along with robotics, coming after the jobs that should exist, because the jobs that should exist actually damage the human body, whether you're a stone worker, carpenter, electrician, if you're in the trades, anything. Eh, even the railroads, even railroad workers, where you have to go out and with a diesel powered driver just slam ties and you know I'm trying to think. I forget what the hell they use. That's the thing. There's so many I've got so much exposure to so many different trades and fields, and I know how to do so much that the jargon overfills, and it just takes up all the goddamn room in my head trying to keep up with everything. Um, oh, there was one tool in specifically where it is fairly dangerous if you are a scrub, but regardless, we'll move on. Conveniently, whilst the US is supposedly tied up in Iran and oil supplies for a lot of other countries are drying up, conveniently, supposedly Ukrainian drones have actually made it to Moscow and did a mass bombing attack. Now, the question is, what's the core? I'm starting to think that's the core. If the position is fairly simple, if you go back to the financial system, the European Union essentially bankrupted itself the same way that the US has bankrupted itself, trying to keep the paper economy going. The financial system needed collateral, and that collateral could come in the form of timberlands, oil, any kind of raw materials, resources, and the only way to keep the infinitely growing, infinite growth economy going was to capture the Russian resources. Okay. especially even with China, because we did lose effectively. We lost the cheap Chinese labor and the cheap Russian resources, okay, post the war starting. Now, the only thing that can keep the European economy going is an influx of collateral. The United States also needs increasingly an influx of collateral. There is only one country with the sheer volume of resources that could possibly sate the financial system, and it's the Russians. So, whilst everybody is distracted with all of the other shit that's going on, conveniently, the Ukrainians seem to be actually gaining steam and pushing back the Russians. Now, I mean, they might not necessarily be pushing them back. Obviously, I'm not on the front lines or anything. But generally, if you start getting drones, whoop, if you start getting drones into Russia proper, and you start engaging in the war of attrition in the capital, that's interesting. Did the Ukrainians make the drones themselves? Is literally everything being done to distract from the fact that they are trying to pump up the Europeans to go in, largely destroy themselves in an invasion of Russia, to capture the resources, and then, have that nice little New World War, capture the resources via the proxy war, and then try to use that to stabilize the system? Or have we just given up on the idea that the system is savable, and now we've gone into essentially a modified version of the Scram theory, but not just for oil, for everything? So currently, I don't know how many people are paying attention to this, but the price inflation post the oil shock is beginning. And it's getting kind of bad. Um, Simple things like, what was it? Vinegar. Simple things like vinegar used to be $2, now it's 4. That's one of the newer ones. That's one of the newer ones. They're about to run out of motor oil, supposedly. That was information that was handed right in Walmart's lap. They're not going to be able to get any more motor oil. Or at the very least, they're not going to be able to get a supply stable enough to keep up with the normal demand. So, we're looking at higher gas prices, higher oil prices. We're looking at higher prices across the board. We're looking at higher prices for labor. We're looking at higher prices everywhere. And it's finally getting to the point, because if you look at it for what it is, if they were trying to destroy the system and they were trying to break people's capability, um, people have been incredibly resilient considering the poor economic conditions. But there always is a breaking point. At some point, it has to stop. I think we're getting there. Now, there's a lot of directions you can go with it, and I can't put myself out there as having all of the answers. Honestly, trying to suss out what is the primary thing, what is the primary issue. You have the West versus the East. You have the sovereign nations and their individual desires. You have the collective groups and their desires. And we have an economy that is so close to falling apart. And the few bright lights in our economic system are going out now. At this point, like outside of trying to keep track of what is the real issue, what are they distracting us from? Outside of all that, if you look at things for what they are, it seems that we are subject to the standard predictive programming for the end of civilization. So, if you look at things for what they are, the system is normally, mainstream media back in the past would never cover these kind of subjects. Then all of a sudden they got the green light and now it's everywhere. We're being told that we're not going to have enough oil, we're not going to have enough gas, we're not going to have enough food, we're not going to have enough X or Y or Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We're not going to have enough of anything. And then they are slowly strangling the supply. What is the primary goal of this? Either the system's completely falling apart, or we are getting the forewarning and we have the opportunity ahead of time if we individually are up to date enough with the information and know how to read it and know how to understand it. We're essentially being forewarned that the system is coming to an end, and to prepare by setting up our own food supplies, setting up alternative transportation, doing literally everything we can to separate from the system, because it doesn't look like the system's going to survive. Okay? For whatever reason. For whatever reason. And essentially, it's not necessarily a survival of the fittest scenario. It seems we're being led down the path to survival of the maybe not the most intelligent, because some of the quote unquote most intelligent people are the dumbest people on earth. If you know how to suss out the truth, if you are the type of people who don't take the um, body altering booty juice that they tell you to put in your arm, this might be the deep state's version of selection theory to essentially decide who gets to continue on in the human race in the new system and who doesn't. You got to look at it for what it is. That could very well be the case. Now, if you are a normal person who is just trying to live your life, the system does not necessarily want any more people who are just lame and boring, normal. The system want either you're going to have to find ways to support yourself as a human being free of the system entirely, or you're going in the fucking pod. If they will even offer you the pod, because it looks like, based on how things are going, they don't even want to offer people the pod. It looks like now that people have essentially rejected the WEF and that plan, it looks like the pods will be off the table and they'll just let the system fall apart and let people, endure until they can't anymore. And I don't know exactly how to feel about that. Because honestly, every single one of us out there, yeah, Carlin's bit, half of the people in the room are dumb as fuck. The other half are even dumber than they are. And the thing is, like, I try not to be hubristic, okay? But everybody knows when you go out into the normal everyday world, you got a bunch of people running around just cracked out on substances. They're a fucking mess. You've got people who consistently choose to be self destructive to the extent, well, you gotta look at it for what it is. If we're a society, if somebody decides to become self destructive, well, they're only hurting themselves. It's their body. They can do what they want. A valid argument. But what happens when you run out of crack? You end up stealing from your neighbors. You end up becoming a problem for society. And you end up damaging society by what you have to do to keep that going. You know, that issue of personal choice. Well, we see what the vast majority of people do when they're offered a choice. They choose self destruction, they choose to be reckless, they choose to fuck everything up. And then they sit there after they fuck their lives up and eventually, at least for a good while, they will go out there and effectively try to fuck up other people's lives, whether they know it or not. And then it's only once they're burnt out, washed up, and they're in their late 50s, 40s, 50s, that they finally start to settle down and just live in the giant fucking hole that they've dug for themselves. The system does not want to support those people anymore because it's becoming more of a burden to keep those people playing the game than it is to just see to the end of the system and let the cards fall where they may. I think we're at the point where if it's not, let's try to steal the Russian territory and collateralize every single thing there and use it, feast on it to keep the pseudo capitalist system going. If it's not that, then we're being tipped off and forewarned as a population. It's time to start the suffering, essentially. And I still don't know how to feel about that because there's too much to know. There's too much to keep up on. And the thing is, too, the elite aren't necessarily hiding it anymore. The deep state, those type of people, they're not hiding it anymore. They're not hiding it anymore. You look into all the events, like Charlie. You look deep into those events, you're gonna start seeing quite a few inconsistencies, and it's gonna make you question everything. And more, especially with how brazen everything is at this point, more and more you find yourself in the position where you can't believe a single fucking thing you hear. And that's a bit unnerving. It's really unnerving. Because once you don't know what to believe, I mean, this was the target of the CIA back in the day. This was essentially their mission statement. They haven't succeeded until Americans know nothing. We're there. We're absolutely there. The official narratives are so full of fucking holes that you can't do anything with them. But then you start digging into the fringe narratives, what used to be relegated to conspiracy theory and written off immediately, and a lot more things make a lot more sense. It is what it is. If you have an idea what the main thing is that they're trying to distract everybody from, it could be the fact that the entire economy is completely stalled out and died. And that's not a joke. You look at actual money circulation, you look at actual cash flows, you look at how actual people are doing. The economy is pretty much dead. Some things are still moving, obviously, but what's backing those? What's backing the few sectors that are still doing well? A lot of people were looking at the AI companies, and of course, we all know that there's some circular accounting going on. The question is, does it stop at the AI companies, or does it extend to all of the major corporates? Are they just doing circular accounting across all of them to cover up the fact that there is no real economy anymore? That the flows are so low and so just eh, that you can't actually grow the economy, you can't do anything with it? That if you were actually forced to play by the rules supply and demand, input output, you'd go bankrupt instantly. Who knows? If you have any ideas, throw it in the comments section below. If you like the video, like, favorite, sub, share, do all the things. Hype it if it comes up, if you so choose. I realize I'm real slow and broken up on this one. Whatever. If you're interested in personal consulting, stop by www.spaceconsulting.com without the dash. We also do business consulting, which is a thing. I realize I'm fairly doom and gloom and worried about quite a lot of other things, but God knows I can still help quite a bit, regardless of the situations. Anyway, I'll end it here. You guys have a good one.